Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the Peak to Peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
Eshan, you should take this mic here.
The song that you are currently listening to is called Foreverland, and it's performed by the group Canyon Collective. They'll be performing at the Gold Hill General Store very soon to celebrate their debut album. More details coming up later in the podcast. Hello there, everybody. My name is Jamie Lammers, and welcome, finally, to the first part of a very special two-part episode of Music of the Mountains, Where to Be and What to See, brought to you by the Mountaineer Podcast. I am thrilled that this episode is finally ready to go. Before we jump into our interviews for this episode, let's get into our regular preliminary announcements. First, I wanted to let you guys know that it's time once again for the annual Mountaineer Poetry Contest. This is a reader-submitted contest with a Reader's Choice poll to vote for your favorite. Poems will be published through April 2025, National Poetry Month. Be sure to head to the mtnear.com/forms/its-your-turn or find the QR code to submit the form by heading to our homepage at the mtnear.com. Next, we're looking for more DJs to join the Mountaineer Podcast. We're always looking for more peak-to-peak voices to feature on this podcast, so be sure to email me at media@themountaineer.com to let me know if you want to be involved in the podcast in any way, shape, or form. Also, email our editor-in-chief, Barbara Hart, at info@themountaineer.com. And finally, promotional announcements brought to you by the Mountaineer.
Looking for a unique advertising opportunity? The Mountaineer Podcast may be a perfect fit for you. Our podcast reaches local listeners at least 3 days each week. We can create your podcast commercial for you, or you can submit your own. Contact Amanda McDonald for additional information. Her email is adsales@themountaineer.com, and her cell is 720-960-2900. Have you checked out the Mountaineer YouTube lately? We are very excited to have a videographer intern this spring, as well as Clementine Miller, who's been working hard to record some of our local events and meetings to share with you. Go check it out on the Mountaineer YouTube. Have you seen our 2024 Peak to Peak Visitors Guide? We have just launched our 2025 Media Kit for the next guide. Go to our website and click on Advertise to see the full media kit there. Spring is springing, and we all know that means the flowers will be popping out all over the place, reminding us of beautiful art. That also means it's time to start thinking about the 2025 studio tour. Go to our website and click on special sections to view the 2024 guide and prepare yourself for this year's edition.
All right, now let's get into our first interview for this episode. Do you mind introducing yourself real quick?
Sure thing, yeah. My name is Zach Hedstrom, and I'm the drummer and band leader of Canyon Collective.
And you guys are playing a very special album release show at the Gold Hill General Store very soon.
That is correct. We're playing the Gold Hill General Store on April 26th. The showtime for that is going to be 7:30 p.m. and it's going to be a big celebration, a great time. Everybody's going to come out and be dancing, and we're also going to be celebrating the release of our first live album.
Okay, so tell me a bit about Canyon Collective. Can you tell me how it got started as a group?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, I live up in Fourmile Canyon on a piece of property that has been kind of a musical place for a number of years. Actually, even before I lived up here, my house was inhabited by jazz musicians. It was inhabited by actually Grammy-winning piano players, and so the land just has this musical soul to it. And when I moved up about 5 years ago, we started hosting these musical gatherings, just bringing all our friends together, playing music, enjoying each other's company, and that kind of created a little bit of a momentum, a little bit of a scene around here, and then we kind of decided to take that out into the world and start playing some shows. We started playing just locally up here in Gold Hill and some smaller venues, bars down in Boulder, and that developed a little bit of an interest, a little bit of a following, and a desire to bring the project a little bit further, so we ascribed the name Canyon Collective to the group. It's called Canyon Collective because we do have a sort of rotating lineup of musicians. We've got core members that are featured in most of our shows, but we love to bring in other guest musicians. We love to bring in other players, different instrumentation. So every show is a little bit different, definitely an experience. The way that I like to describe the band is high energy, global grooves funk band. So the primary genre of the music is funk, but that is influenced by other styles of world music, particularly Latin cumbia style rhythms, West African high life and Afrobeat rhythms, some reggae, as well as some other styles too. So it's just a fun, high-energy, danceable group, and yeah, we're really excited to be getting our name out there and starting to play some bigger shows in the area.
So who are the members that have jumped in to play in the band? And is there a core lineup?
Absolutely, yeah, we do have a core lineup. So like I mentioned, I am our drummer, and then we have, we've got Christopher Klaus is our primary bassist. He also has his own band called Phoebe Nix that plays quite often in the area. We've got a great keyboard player that plays with us most evenings. His name is Ryan Benthall. We have a lovely trombone player named Eshan, as well as a trumpeter by the name of Matt Wilkolak. He plays in a number of groups in the area as well. Our guitarist that often joins us, his name is Derek Miles, and then we've got a percussionist as well, Greg Freeman. So yeah, that's kind of our core lineup, and then we'll bring in some other instrumentation as well, depending on the night. But yeah, those are our core members.
By the way, the trombone player's full name is Eshan Escoffery. Okay, but what about you specifically, Zach? How did you get started in music in the first place?
Yeah, man. Well, I started playing drums when I was 10. I grew up here in Boulder, Colorado, and got really into music and rhythm from a young age. And when I was in high school, I would actually go down on Pearl Street and drum on buckets. So if anybody's been around for a while and they remember a 14 or 15-year-old kid laying into some 5-gallon buckets on Pearl Street, that was probably me. And I did that to raise money to buy the drums that I learned to play on. So that kind of was my early years. And then actually when I was 16, I started studying tabla and Indian classical music. So tabla is a drum that is used primarily in Hindustani or Indian classical music. It's the accompanying instrument for sitar as well as other Indian vocal music, sarod, and other styles as well. But that stint of studying tabla very seriously really influenced my playing as well. I became a lot more interested in world music, world rhythms, influencing those other styles into my playing. I actually didn't even touch my drum kit for probably 4 years. I was so serious about just playing tabla. I also kind of have been involved in some international travels, and so picked up some other musical styles down in Central and South America and in Europe that have influenced me as well. Have studied some West African drumming with a couple of local guys from Ghana. So yeah, I think that really I'm a drummer through and through who loves world music, and so I also love to make people dance. I love to move people with rhythm, so that's kind of a driving influence for the band. band is to move people with rhythm, move people with soul, move people with good energy. I think music can be an experience that can take somebody on a journey. And in my opinion, some of the best music is music that moves you. It might move you physically, it might move you intellectually, it might move you spiritually. And I think for Canyon Collective, we often move people physically. It's a very upbeat, kind of danceable music. So that's kind of the vibe.
So do you guys primarily focus on original songs or covers, and how does the writing or arranging process work?
Yeah, well, because the nature of the band is somewhat fluctuating, it's definitely an improvisation forward group, but we do have forums, we do have songs, and that's a collaborative effort. I'm not the only songwriter. All of our members bring ideas to the group. All the members will bring their own pieces to the group, and a lot of times we'll just call styles right in the moment. We'll be in a show and we'll say, hey, let's play a cumbia in E, and then we'll just start jamming on that, and then some really cool things come right in the moment. So I wouldn't call us a jam band. That's its own style, but it definitely is improvisationally motivated. This album that we are about to come out with, it's a live album, and it's called Live from the Mines, because actually on New Year's Day this year, Canyon Collective played a show inside of a mine shaft up here in Fourmile Canyon. It was a private party, and very luckily we got that recorded, and we all went back and listened to it and said, dang, this actually sounds pretty good, a lot better than we thought. So it was a little bit of an unintentional first album release. We'd been talking about doing an album anyways, and then we got this recording back and said, hey, why don't we just mix this? And it's a cool concept, being Canyon Collective, that we release our first album just from something literally inside of the mountain. We were about, maybe 100 feet inside of a mine shaft, and really unique acoustics and interesting energy in there. So yeah, that's going to be coming out within the next few weeks. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, that'll be what we're getting after at the Gold Hill show.
In that case, I'm curious, what sticks out to you about improvisational pieces and playing them in a group like this?
To me, the improvisational style represents being in the present moment fully and listening to the other members fully, taking everybody's ideas at face value, taking them seriously, letting it be a collaboration and letting it be a spontaneous creation. I think that music has this power to bring you to a state of consciousness which is not in your daily consciousness. And for me, being in a band which is improvisational so that every single show, every single moment with the band is different. Even if we play the same song, it's never going to be rendered the same way. That creates kind of a vivaciousness and a kind of liveliness to it that we pick up on as musicians, and it makes it more fun for us. And then the audience picks up on that as well, and they can feel that. They can feel that they're riding that wave with us. And it's a conversation. It's a conversation between the members, and it's also a conversation with the audience. I think that is something that we all feel, is that when we start grooving on an idea and we're taking that idea in different places and we feel the audience responding to us and we watch them dance and we hear them shout out and whatnot, it's kind of this ecstatic thing that just builds up and it's really a lot of fun. So I'm all for playing songs as well too, but I think that's maybe also part of my background. Indian classical music is an extremely improvisational style. When you play a rag, that rag is never going to be played the same way twice. There are forms that keep it structured into a particular rag that you're going to play, but the improvisational element is always there. So I think that that's part of what I love about music, that creation in the moment. And yeah, that's kind of been the thing that we've decided to bring into our music.
And in regards to playing live, do you prefer playing by yourself or with other people? Are there pros and cons to both?
I definitely like playing with other people. I like the conversation that it brings when you have multiple musicians together and there's a dance taking place. I think it depends on the style. With this group, I think having a slightly larger lineup is fun because you get all these different voices, having horns in a band and then also having a really strong keyboardist in the band and then having a whole slew of different percussion sounds. And then we've even had our guitar player bring a theremin and he brings a lap steel. So I love the concept of featuring different voices in the music. And that's, I think, part of why we called it the collective, is because it's a collection of many different voices kind of coming together for the common goal of taking people on a musical journey. On the flip side of that, not in this group, but in myself, if I play Indian classical music, that generally is two people on stage, and that's a very intimate experience. I'm really lucky to be able to accompany my teacher, Roshan Partia, fairly regularly here in the Boulder, Denver area. He's a a sitar player from Rajasthan in his late 70s, and that's a completely different experience. It's much more focused and classical music, so it has a completely different feel. But even then, there's that active conversation that's taking place. So I've never been all that called to just play by myself. I know there's a lot of people that do that, and it's beautiful, and I really respect the folks that can stand up there and have the spotlight on them and really rock it. But for me, I love being in that conversation with my other musicians.
And what in particular sticks out to you about performing live, especially with Canyon Collective?
What sticks out to me about it is that it's a fun experience, that it's a experience that we don't know the direction it's going to go fully, and the energy that we show up with in that moment is going to drive that, and the energy that the audience shows up with is going to drive that, and the energy of the space is going to drive that, and all these energies playing together and commingling are going to drive that. I think that that's kind of mysterious in nature, and when you think about the nature of sound and the nature of rhythm and how primal that is for the human experience, we have been gathering under the guise of listening and participating in music for tens of thousands, if not longer, of years. And I think that for me, speaking for myself, it brings me into a state of mind that taps into that more primal essence, or that more timeless essence of what it means to be a human being. And I think that I personally bring that into my playing. I think a lot of the other folks that are in our band, in their own words, might say the same thing. And I think that for me, when we bring that into an audience and we bring that into a live setting, I love watching how people kind of notice that and get that, and then they really start getting it and moving with it and grooving it, and we're all kind of in it together. So yeah, that's my favorite thing.
And is there anything you hope people will take away from Canyon Collective shows when they come to see the group?
Yeah, when you come to a Canyon Collective show, I'd say just leave your inhibitions at the door and be ready to have a good time, be ready to dance, be ready to meet other people, be ready to move and feel that music, be ready to maybe hear some other styles that you don't often hear. We try and bring in a diverse suite of influences and sounds, and so be prepared for something different every time. If you've been to one show, come to the next show, because the next show is going to be different. And the more that y'all are coming and participating with us, the more that we're showing up and throwing down for you. So it's a team effort, I would say. The other thing that I want to throw in here is that we're actually planning a DIY music festival up here in the canyon, and I don't have enough details yet to really properly promote that, but what I will say is that we're planning something very cool in the month of August up here in Fourmile Canyon, where we're going to be featuring a lot of local musicians and kind of bringing another stage to this Colorado and particularly Boulder mountain music scene. And it's going to be outdoors. It's going to be very much in the same spirit of the stuff that I'm talking about. So stay tuned for that, but that's all I can say about it at the moment.
And I assume because Canyon Collective is composed of a very dynamic lineup, that each of the members have musical projects outside of Canyon Collective.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, essentially all of our members are in other groups as well. Like I mentioned, our bass player, Chris, he has his own project called Phoebe Nicks. They play in the area quite regularly and are starting to branch out to be playing outside of the state even and touring around. I believe that they're playing the Caribou Room somewhat soon. Ryan Benthall, our keyboard player, he's an incredible musician in his own right that's participating in multiple projects. He's also a solo artist and is going to be releasing, well, he just released his debut solo album and is playing that at Dazzle this week down in Denver. So he's really fantastic. Matt Wilkolak, our trumpet player, he's in various local groups like the Pamlico Sound. I think he plays with a couple other groups as well. And for myself, you know, I sit in with different bands, often on percussion, but I've kind of chose to make this Canyon Collective thing sort of my focus for the moment, as well as I organize and play local Indian classical shows. I've actually got a incredible tabla player who is coming from India in May, and I'm organizing a concert for him May 11th. The venue is TBD, but yeah, for me, that's kind of my other world, is in the Indian style of music. But yeah, everybody's staying pretty busy.
And yeah, is there anything else in general about Canyon Collective, any upcoming shows or other things you want to promote, or just anything else I didn't ask that you want to add?
Sure, yeah, we are kind of filling up our schedule for spring and summer at the moment. I think the best way to stay in touch and follow our shows at the moment is to follow us on Instagram. So if you just look up Canyon Collective, you'll find the band. After Gold Hill, we are going to be playing twice up in Jamestown. We're playing the Jamestown 4th of July Festival this year, as well as some of their summer nights in the park. We've got a tentative date at the Velvet Elk that we are in the process of settling in. I think if there's any others that I know off the top of my head. Yeah, I'd say for right now, just give us a follow on social media and then you can stay tuned for all of our events. Oh, actually, the other thing I was going to mention is up here in Fourmile where I live, we started a monthly house concert series that we're starting to bring in some other local musicians. Just had a really cool band from Estes Park come and play in March, and we're going to be doing that once a month leading up to our August event. So we're promoting that as well on our social media. So yeah, just keep an eye out for events, and we'd love to see everybody out there on April 26th.
And okay, I have to ask about this. You mentioned earlier that your property and the area where you live in Fourmile Canyon has a particularly vibrant musical history. Do you mind talking a bit more about that musical history?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've just been kind of piecing it together since living here, but I live, so in Fourmile Canyon, I'm between Wall Street and Sunset is the area, so it's about 8 miles up Fourmile Canyon. The house, it's not a historic house by nature. I think the house was built up in the 70s, but the pianist that I mentioned, his name is Peter Cater. He's a German pianist, and he's won some Grammys, and he lived here. The little one-bedroom cabin that I have been in was his recording studio, and I think he wrote that album here. The jazz musicians, I don't know a whole lot about them, actually. I know that we have some furniture in the house that was brought from the Blue Note in Boulder, so I guess Boulder had a Blue Note in the 1970s, and like I've got a wine rack in my kitchen that was pulled out of that club when it shut down. There was a guy, local artist by the name of Stephen Hook that lived up here for a while. So yeah, these are some of the names that I know. And then what's kind of cool is this is another part of Boulder history. So you might be familiar with the band Magic Music from the 1970s. They were based out of Boulder. Anyway, they've got kind of a presence up here. Their bass player and band manager both live up here. And their band manager, Greg, he actually throws a festival up here every couple of years called Copperstock, which is a play on Woodstock and Copper Rock, which is the name of the little mining compound that used to sit on his property. So yeah, it's kind of funny, you know, there's stuff that's just tucked back here, and if you wouldn't know, then you wouldn't know, but yeah, it's a good community. Yeah, look up Magic Music because they just made a movie about them like a couple of years. It was like the big reunion of, I think it's on Amazon, Magic Music, and yeah, those guys, that all kind of happened and took place in Boulder.
In case you're curious about that documentary, it's called 40 Years in the Making, the Magic Music Movie. But yeah, in general, I think those are all the questions I have on my end. Is there anything else you can think of that you want to add before we sign off?
Cool. I think you hit the bases. Personally, I don't have a whole lot more to add. Yeah, that was pretty thorough. Yeah, thanks, Jamie, and thanks to the Mountaineer. We really appreciate the feature. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much, Zach, for coming on board and joining us for the podcast. Of course, since this is such a massive group of people, I wanted to invite as many members of the band as I could onto the podcast. So, I've got one more interview for you this episode. Our second guest. Do you mind introducing yourself real quick?
Yeah, hi. My name is Christopher Klaus. I play in Canyon Collective. I front Phoebe Nix, and I live in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay, so we just heard from Zach that you guys will be performing at the Gold Hill General Store very soon. But he also told me during our conversation that you and your group, Phoebe Nix, have a performance at the Caribou Room very soon.
Oh, wow, you got the scoop. Yeah, so Phoebe Nix just booked May 10th opening for this awesome Allman Brothers band at the Caribou Room. It'll be our first time playing up there. So we're stoked about that.
If you're curious to see Phoebe Nix open for the Allman Brothers Band tribute group, The Other Brothers, then be sure to head to thecaribouroom.com to get tickets now for their show on May 10th. But don't worry, we'll get more into detail about those groups and that performance in the very near future. Switching gears back to Canyon Collective, though, I'm curious, Chris, what's your perspective about how you joined the group and how the group has evolved since you joined?
Well, crazy thing is about I'm 30 now. About 12 years ago, my dad introduced me to his neighbor's tabla student. His neighbor is Jeffrey Rogers. He's a fantastic Indian classical percussion instructor. And he's been teaching Zachary since Zach was probably like 14. So I was introduced to Zach when I was a young man. I moved away. I moved back to Jersey for a bit. I came back here, and maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, I wound up moving into the house to rent that Zach now owns. And at that time, there were a bunch of us living there, but me and Zach really bonded over music over the years and had a lot of really special, magical times playing. And I moved back into the canyon on my own about a year ago. And it was just kind of the perfect timing. I think Zach's business was in such a great place that he could start to really focus on his musical passions again. And, we connected there. In the beginning, he had done some shows with slightly changing lineups. I think we've got it pretty sussed out now. And the idea being that a lot of us in the Canyon Collective, at least 3 or 4 of us, actually live in the Canyon. And this idea of collective where there's room for people to kind of come and go and have it be a collective thing of musicians. Yeah, so that's how it got started. Is Zach had this idea to put together a fun improvisational and cumbia-based band, actually. That's a piece of it, too. He wanted to hit in some of this really awesome Latin music. So I'd say that's the genesis.
And what about your own musical life, Chris? How did you get started in music in the first place?
Well, I spent my life between New Jersey and Colorado, and I was here for middle school in Boulder. And I had this really mean music teacher, but she did a handbell class, and for whatever reason, I wanted to do the extracurricular handbell class, and I kind of liked that, the reading the music and performing with people. So then I went on and did orchestra for 3 years and learned viola. And that was really cool. I liked the classical, and I liked playing with people, but they never taught us how to improvise or how to make up our own stuff, right? They just told me, here's how you play this. Here's a C major scale, but nobody ever said this is what you can do with the C major scale. And it's also D Dorian and E Phrygian and F Lydian. They never told me that. And when I got back to Jersey, I was 14. It was high school. I kind of felt like viola wasn't very cool and that style of music wasn't so cool. And my dad had left me a couple guitars to play with. He was always, I should mention that I grew up with a dad with like Marshall amps in the basement playing super loud. So I think at about 14, even though I still felt rebellious and didn't want to do anything my dad would tell me, I was like, maybe I'll pick up these guitars. This looks cooler. And, I got into Nirvana and grunge and rock and roll and Green Day. And all through high school, I played in a bunch of fun bands. And after high school, took it more serious, started performing a lot, doing cover bands up and down the Jersey Shore. Played in a few creative bands out there that are still doing really good, like Baron Praxis. Those are great guys. And basically found the bands that I looked up to and just stuck around them as a young guy. And luckily, some really masterful players took me under their wing and taught me quite a bit about music. And so now for about 10 years, I've actually been a music instructor too, because I went and learned piano and drums and bass and wanted to be able to record and understand music better. So now I teach at a private school in Boulder actually as a music teacher. I have private students. And I focus on songwriting and sharing music with other people and being in creative group processes. I really like that idea of playing with other folks, especially on stage.
And are there any particular styles you've gravitated to over your time performing?
In my heart, I'm definitely into the Beatles and 70s rock and 90s alternative and Soundgarden, bands like that. But as I've gotten older, I've aspired to at least get a handle on jazz. It's always been like the creeping monster in the corner that I've been too scared to face. And I actually met a great instructor named Charles Blenzig. He's a very accomplished jazz musician who teaches at a studio I work at. And he's showing me quite a bit, and I'm diving in and trying to learn the world of jazz. But I'd say jazz and world music. There's music in North Africa. There's music out of Latin America. That really fascinates me. But at my heart, I'm like a rock and funk kind of old school Joe Walsh era of guitar players, Frank Zappa, stuff like that.
You just mentioned that you're also a music teacher. Are there similar aspects to performing as a musician and working as a music teacher?
I think, it takes, in some ways, a similar kind of person to be able to get up on stage and engage a crowd and have an audience have a great experience as it does to, let's say, lead a classroom. And in both professions, it takes a decent amount of know-how, right? You have to know what you're doing and ideally know it well enough to talk to your bandmates or your students and explain or discuss what we're going to do, and have some kind of basic language or handle by which you can describe music. So I find in that way they're actually very similar. But, it's definitely a different energy when I'm in a classroom of kindergartners as opposed to after 3 hours of playing in the basement of License One and having a couple whiskeys in me. Different worlds, but they overlap very well.
Have you been able to dive more into improvisational music since joining Canyon Collective? And what sticks out to you about improvisation?
Well, that's something I love about the band is we go up there. I mean, we get together and we jam sometimes at home, but when we perform, we really do just kind of go up there and do it with very little discussion or forethought of how it's going to be. You know, it is incredibly and solely improvisational. I mean, from time to time we'll bounce into a cover, but I would say, yeah, I've always liked improvising. It's always been fun for me, exciting, let's say, right, to have to be on that level of consciousness where you're not really thinking anymore. And this is the first band I've ever been in that does pretty much entirely improvisational sets. And yeah, you know, you learn a lot about each other. You learn a lot about yourself. We're really developing our skills and how we listen and communicate with each other. And I've always had this creeping suspicion at the end of the day, the more I try this and the more I try to figure out music, that at the end of the day, it's not about how complicated or crazy of the music you play. It's about how fun and engaging it is and how much it affects the audience. And with that idea, you should be able to kind of just go up there and just make good sounds, right? So that's kind of how I try to think when I'm playing, usually bass with Canyon Collective, is what would sound really cool if I was in the audience? I'm going to do that. And what's going to make people shake their butts? And then when I see butt shaking, I know that I've hit it. So it's a really fun way to learn the improvisation, not just with the band, but in these live settings, and develop that with audiences, right? Develop that relationship and that conversation with the audiences and see what we're doing and how it actually affects people. Yeah, it's been an incredible learning experience.
And as a performer, do you prefer playing on your own or with a group? Are there pros and cons to both?
I think for my development over the years, I did a lot of open mics. And that really helped me as a songwriter kind of hone in, and as a singer, right? Like being able to go up with just my acoustic and a song I wrote. And if people were liking that, when I scaled it up, that was a whole nother thing. But at a core, like, I like electric music. I like amplified music. I love having a drummer and a bass player and a keyboard player with me. I mean, that's incredible. Or being a part of that rhythm section, you know, me and Zach on bass and drums. It's fun to go up, and from time to time I do like to do an open mic or a acoustic set still and kind of share ideas of songs and things. But for my original music and for performing, I definitely prefer to play with other musicians. It's a lot more fun because they're going to do things that I would have never thought to do, right? They're going to bring ideas up that I'd never considered before, and that's where music gets really fun to me, is when the guy next to me plays something, I'm like, wait, what just happened? And now we're in a whole new territory, and that's really exciting stuff.
And I assume most of the original music that you end up writing to perform is written outside of Canyon Collective.
Yeah, because with Canyon Collective, we have more of sketches. Like, we'll do a funk one, we'll do a 6/8 slow blues. We have that more framework concept when we hit things. But yeah, I've been writing and performing and releasing music under the name Phoebe Nicks for about, like 12 years now, almost 10 years. That started back in Jersey. And at this point, I've got one really long album and two not so long EPs up on, you know, Spotify, Apple Music, all that jazz. And we're actually recording our next single right now. It'll be out hopefully within a month or so. And yeah, that's kind of my world for writing my own songs. And I'm lucky to have a really, really talented group of musicians, some of which also play with Canyon Collective. Like our keyboard player, Ryan Benthall, plays in both bands, and he's one of the best keyboard players, I'd say, in the world. Guy's a stud. So I've been very grateful to have assembled a really solid group to be playing my original music with, too. That's very satisfying.
On Spotify, the EP Luna Soa Lumi, the album Phoebe Nicks, and the EP Late Summer's Moon are currently available. I started looking at Phoebe Nicks' discography while I was talking to Chris, and I couldn't help but notice that all of the album covers, at least the ones on Spotify, are very oriented in the solar system.
Oh, yeah, you see that there's a theme going of like space stuff. I didn't mean to do that, but it just seems to be that way.
That's really cool. And in general, through all of the groups that you're a part of, or just performing on your own, what do you love most about performing live?
It's just, you know, in life, everyone kind of puts their belt on and tucks in their shirt, and we're all kind of serious. And then when you're in a venue and it's 11 o'clock at night, it's midnight, and the people have had hours to get loose and to kind of forget about their jobs and all the other life baloney that they're thinking about usually. You get to see people in a very special light, and we get to show up together in a very special, I don't know, I guess people talk about it in meditation and flow state. There's a million words. A psychedelic experience might facilitate this kind of consciousness and feeling, but ultimately it brings me and the people I'm playing with in the audience to a place of ecstasy that kind of transcends the 3D idea of reality that we live in. All of a sudden we're in a very different realm. And the feeling of getting to close your eyes and go to another place and then open your eyes and see people, like, you know, when I'm playing a song and I see people doing funky dance moves and feeling cool and feeling like it's Friday night night and they don't have a care in the world and they're like the coolest person in the room, I know we've done our job. You know what I mean? To create an environment where people feel really comfortable getting free and getting funky. And that's something that Canyon Collective especially, I think because we're so improvisational and we play a lot of parties, and our first show of the year was in a mine, believe it or not, an active gold mine. And we had maybe 40 people crammed in this mine shaft. It was a pretty spacious mine shaft. We had mining engineers, we had air circulation systems, ran hundreds of feet of cable and stuff. It was insanity, but we did it. And to get to do something so wild like that and share that with an audience, it's just the places that music has taken me, the friends I've made, and the feelings we get to share together. It's really something beautiful. And as an instructor too, you know, to then show young people. When I was in school, I had a very hard time. It was all sit still, do your homework, do this boring stuff. And I was like, well, I want to run around and do fun stuff. What is this? And so now to work in a school with young people and get to support their sense of selves and bolster the idea that, you know, if they have some crazy dream, they can run that dream down and do it one day and it's real, and that there's a million ways to do it. And even a level above that, to be a role model for them that shows you don't have to be some kind of tragic artist, or, you know, a lot of people have this idea that rock and roll is you got to destroy your body and go all hard, and there's a lot of drugs and alcohol and bad sleep. And it's like, no, young people, you can be healthy, happy, have some fun too, and live a really wholesome life as a musician and an artist, or as whatever the heck you want to be. Those are the pieces of this that I really, really cherish, some of them at least.
Is there anything that you hope people take away from your shows when they come to see you, particularly Canyon Collective shows?
That it's really fun. And if you want to do something and you want to try something in life and you're scared, you know, it's one thing. Some people like to climb mountains and do physically dangerous things. I'm not going to advocate for bodily harm and dangerous stuff. But if you're up against the wall of something that's socially scary, emotionally scary, in my experience, the best stuff happens when you go a little bit outside what you thought was possible, what you thought your limits were, what you thought was the safe bet. You know, when you're willing to put yourself a little bit in the deep end into a situation where you're like, shoot, can I even do this? That's where really cool stuff starts to happen. It's scary, but if you take the chance. And the other piece being that I think people believe in luck and things like that, but in my experience, it's more about consistently trying at something, you know. Some people make it in this amount of time or that amount of time, but what we don't see is what they did before that. And to get anywhere with anything, you just have to not give up, especially when it's hard, especially when you hate it, especially when it sucks or you're depressed and you're saying, why am I doing this? That's especially the time that you need to buckle down and push ahead. And we never really know how close we are to the things we want until we go for it.
And is there anything else you want to add about Canyon Collective or your own performances or anything in general before we wrap up?
I would just say, to mention that for the Canyon Collective album, it's kind of a unique thing. I mentioned that we performed on the first day of the year in a cave, and I had the forethought to put microphones and everything and bring my recording console. So our first album is actually Cave Sessions Volume 1. It is recorded live inside of a mine in Fourmile Canyon. So I don't know how many records have been made in active gold mines, but I think that's something kind of cool. It definitely sounds different than other spaces I've recorded in, and I'm very excited for people to hear that. What we captured that night was really something wild. The band was in a really spectacular place. We were feeling really good together, and just that there are great things going on in that canyon right now. I've been a lot of places around this country at least, and what's happening with music in Fourmile Canyon right now is like some timeless kind of 70s classic cool thing. I don't know how to say it. It's just magic. And we'll be hosting a monthly concert series at a private location. You'll have to inquire with us through social media and things like that to find out just where. And I will say that at the end of the summer in August, we are planning a pretty sizable event that might even be something like an overnight festival that we'll be hosting with Canyon Collective as a headliner and some other really fantastic bands from the Front Range and beyond. And I won't say too much about that yet other than to just get a little bit of excitement out there that something big is coming.
I will say, the Guinness World Record for the deepest underground concert was awarded to Miners and Sons in 2024. They performed at the 9,000-foot level of the Kidd Mine in Timmins, roughly 2,700 meters underground, according to a CBC News article. However, upon first look, I didn't see any artists that had actually recorded a full underground album. So this live album promises to be something incredibly unique. I think those are all the big questions I have on my end.
Well, thank you, Jamie. I really appreciate your time, and those are thoughtful questions you asked. Those are very thoughtful questions. This is awesome. Kicking it up to the mountains. This is really great, and having any press on our bands really helps us a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christopher, for coming on board and joining us for the podcast. If you want to see Canyon Collective performing live in the Peak to Peak area, then be sure to head over to the Gold Hill General Store located at 531 Main Street in Gold Hill on Saturday, April 26, 2025, starting at 7 p.m. You can keep up with the group on their Instagram page at CanyonCollective_. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to and bearing with me for this first part of a very special two-part episode of Music of the Mountains, Where to Be and What to See, brought to you by the Mountaineer Podcast. I'll be back very, very soon with the second part. But in the meantime, if you want to share this episode or others around with whoever you see fit, then be sure to head to the mtnear.com and scroll near to the bottom, or head to our podcast's main hub at the mtnearpodcast.buzzsprout.com to see a full archive of all of our episodes. If you're interested in getting involved in the podcast in any way, shape, or form, then email Barbara Hart at info@themountaineer.com and or me at media@themountaineer.com, and we'll get something sorted for you. And finally, if you want to give us general or specific feedback on the podcast, then send us a text by going to an individual episode description of the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. I'll see you guys very, very soon for the second part of this Music of the Mountains. Have a great rest of your day! The song that you are currently listening to, Underground Funk, is performed here by Canyon Collective. They'll be performing at the Gold Hill General Store very soon to celebrate the release of their debut live album, recorded in a mine shaft. You can see them performing at the Gold Hill General Store, located at 531 Main Street in Gold Hill, on Saturday, April 26, 2025, starting at 7 p.m. Be sure to keep up with the group, their performances, and their upcoming album release by following their Instagram at CanyonCollective_.
Ain't it funky now? 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 Ain't it funky now?
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local Peak to Peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.